Hi, my name is Tuomas Malinen, and I have just published a 7th installment to my series analyzing and forecasting the war in Ukraine in my newsletter. While I was writing this piece, a thought occurred to me that what I have discovered, understood about the conflict soon reaching its 3-year mark needs to be brought to let's say to an understanding or knowledge of a wider populace. I have essentially come a full 180 concerning with the war in Ukraine. As a Finn and as a man whose family has lost both men and land fighting the Russians, I started with a outpouring sympathy towards Ukraine. My thinking was that, well, Russia is once again invading a peaceful neighboring country. At the end of March 22, we at GNS Economics, where I am a CEO and a leading author, we envisaged 3 scenarios for the war in Ukraine. This is something we have done for, well, several years already, which is that we forecast the path ahead of certain developments through 3 scenarios. There is optimistic, pessimistic, or the worst case, and the most likely scenario. The in the case of Ukraine, the optimistic scenario was a fast peace, if you may. The worst case scenario was that the war prolongs, becomes war of attrition of sort, or guerrilla warfare, and it carries a heavy economic burden. Our most likely scenario at the time was that truce will be reached between April and June 22. Already at the end of March 22, we thought that there is no point of continuing the conflict for much longer because Russia had already obtained most of the objectives, or the publicly stated objectives for the special military operation. We also thought that Rasputitsa, I think it's the word, or mud season arriving to Ukraine, which basically halts the progress of tanks because the ground can't carry them, would be a natural ending point for the conflict and for the truce and peace negotiations to begin. Well, this did not come to be. And as we now know, both the UK and President Biden's representatives were party to claim that they didn't reach a truce and preliminary road to peace in the negotiation at the end of March, beginning of April, led by Turkey in 22. So in August 22, I started to think that what gives? Why is there no? Why doesn't the war stop? And I started to dig deeper into the dynamics of the war, what has actually happened, what had actually happened, and then I studied also the history of NATO and NATO, Russia, Soviet Union relationships. Within a period of maybe 6 months, I came to the conclusion that there is a more sinister plan in the background. Now it looks to me that I don't consider NATO as a peace not a peace, but a defense organization anymore. I think it's an offensive organization. I've always disliked NATO, or Finland joining NATO. I haven't disliked NATO, but Finland joining it. We were a neutral country for over 80 years. It suited us well. It guaranteed peace for us and also for Europe. Maybe I'll make another video about Finland and our downfall at some later date. But anyway, I learned and understood from the actions of the Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at the time that NATO is acting irrationally. NATO is acting as it likes to have a war with Russia. There's really no other way of interpreting the things we were seeing, the statement that he was giving. And then when Mark Rutte took over as the Secretary General of NATO, it just continued the same, or even got worse. And yeah, and this is where President Trump steps in. We have we have seen Russia destroy two NATO equipped and trained and partly led armies in Ukraine already. I don't know what's the plan now. Where are they heading? But of course NATO could have contributed more, especially to US, to the war in Ukraine. More tanks, more men. But that would then meant an actual Russia-NATO war, which for some reason NATO hasn't, or they have not wanted to escalate the conflict in Ukraine up to that point, at least for now. So it has been a kind of a war attrition to both sides. And yeah, this is the point where President Trump steps into the scene, or in the scene. And there were high hopes when he came. He promised in the campaign trail that he will deliver peace in Ukraine for 24 hours. Well, now we know it hasn't happened. And to be honest, it was a very good slogan to be thrown on in the campaign trail, and it really looked it presented it created a view that he really can do it, and confidence, and it was a good quote, let's put it that way. The reality is different. But what I've started to worry now is that it seems that for some reason President Trump is dragging his feet in Ukraine. The statements he has given on 1 million dead Russian soldiers is complete bogus. It's a Western propaganda number, basically, and that the Russian economy is collapsing. It's not. And to be honest, the peace plans presented by retired General Kellogg have been something that you would expect a neocon to write. There is this idea that there could be a peace to strengthen Ukraine, but those days are gone. That was the Cold War era. Now we are on the another era of warfare. So essentially, US and the Western Alliance are fighting a losing war in Ukraine. And what President Trump is truly risking here is that he will turn Ukraine into his own Vietnam War. like his former chief difficult word, Steve Bannon warned just a few days ago. And now we come to the big escalation hypothesis. The longer it takes for President Trump to establish a road to peace, the more power the deep state and the military industrial complex will gain. They will try to lure you, Mr. President, into the conflict that you cannot escape from it anymore. Just tie you so tightly, your administration so tightly into the Ukrainian conflict that you cannot escape it. And then you have your own Vietnam War. I don't think you want that. So this is my plea to President Trump. Please see the reality in Ukraine. Please see the dark plan behind all these developments, which is trying to lure you into a prolonged conflict, a perpetual war in Ukraine and in Europe. And well, I have also a plea to President Putin. If President Trump fails to see, or for some reason is unable to enact the needed steps that would lead to peace in Ukraine. If this happens, I think Russia has only one option left. You need to push the armed forces of Ukraine into surrender, unconditional surrender. This would push the peace process. This would force the peace process into motion, and I'm certain that President Trump would really spring into action if that would happen. Of course, there are grave risks relating to this. I have just past week I have outlined them in a freely available piece in my newsletter. So anyone who's interested, I direct you there. You can find it easily. It's just Tuomas Malinen on geopolitics and the economy, or Jenna's economics newsletter. That's the other source. But I think that the risks of Russia being dragged into a prolonged conflict with heavy casualties is higher than Russia pushing the AFU to surrender. You will lose more Russian lives now, but you will save them by doing this in the future, I'm sure. I hope that both Presidents Trump and President Putin understand that a trap has been set for you, and you need to spring it. And I also hope that my countrymen in Europe and also in the US understand that we need to look at the situation in Ukraine from a hard logical angle. All these naive thoughts that Russia must lose, Ukraine must win, Slava Ukraini, they are just tricks to pull us all in this continent into a bloody conflict, a continental war once again. We need to be cold, unemotional even, when we consider the road to peace in Ukraine, because it has been lured with traps set by these forces that are driving it. I truly hope that a road to peace can be found. We need it. Peace out.